I don't know what's going to happen, Philip. That's why this is jazz. But let's see what I do, okay? You are my fire.
Hello and welcome to Holistic Circle podcast, Spiritual Conversation. My name is Philipp Kobald. We are reaching out to people who are passionate about spreading light, love, and joy and music. And I say, welcome, Rick DellaRatta. Welcome.
Thank you, Philip. And I probably should just tell your audience, I had a skiing accident. I know you ski, that people ski in Austria, right? I had a skiing accident, so I have to wear, the doctor hasn't cleared me to take this off. So, just in case anyone's wondering. So.
We've all been there, and you have a very convincing, crazy professor look, if I might say so. It looks great, but of course it's not fun, and skiing is pretty dangerous. Congratulations that you came out on a good end.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Well, first of all,
I'm glad everything's working out. So.
First of all, let me quick say hello to the audience as well. Welcome back. You know, my little podcast is all about spirituality from every which way. I'm just trying to help anyone interested in spirituality along with bring people from every corner of the world and from every kind of place where spirituality can have a purpose to hopefully inspire you or motivate you to keep on your search going. And today it's going to be definitely fantastic because we can talk about peace and music and spirituality. And with this, I know you have an enormous background, but can you give a couple of words, an introduction, except if you're an accomplished skier?
Yes. I mean, I'd like to promise thing I love skiing, but I do love skiing, but something very creative about skiing. It's the outdoors. It's the feeling. I don't know. There is something. I have a friend who wrote a book about skiing, and he actually says it's a lot like jazz. That's what he says. He's a jazz lover himself. Wow. So he says there is a connection between the improvisational aspects of skiing and playing jazz and the raising your endorphins and stuff like that. But, basically, I started out like everybody else, a musician. My book, it's called Paving the Path for Peace Through Music. And that starts out with a foreword that takes place in your country of Austria, because it's two musicians. One musician is just in a town somewhere, it could be anywhere. And the other musician is in Vienna. It's a child, and both of them are given a musical instrument by their father. Of course, one person in the middle of nowhere might be just given a guitar to play by his father, or a violin or something. And of course, the other musician, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, is given a piano by his father. And it shows how the two of them grow up in very, very similar but different lives. The amateur musician grows up, with a real organic affiliation to his instrument. And he's actually ahead of Mozart because he's getting so much spirituality, as you say for your show. He's getting the spiritual, the bonding with an instrument, the feeling with the universe that an instrument brings you, the organicism, the honesty. He's growing up that way. Wolfgang with his father is growing up in hard, difficult tutelage because his father has an agenda for him, and he's, going to get his hand slapped with a ruler if he makes a mistake, and he has to practice all the time, and he has to practice what his father wants him to practice. So now you have one guy going ahead, which is just the regular kid, and the other guy falling behind, which is Wolfgang, because of the strictness of his, Now things change, and of course, his father has turned him into a trained monkey that can do really well for the king. The king loves it. The people, oh, look at this little kid. He can play like Beethoven. He can play this one and that one. Well, that Beethoven was around, but, the people before it, Bach, let's say. And he can mimic people. And this little kid, and he's making a lot of money for his dad, and everything's, growing that way. Whereas the kid now is just, slowly learning the skills of his instrument. Now things change though, because Wolfgang at some point starts to outgrow his trained monkey. You know what I mean? He's got this almost disguise on. It's profitable, but he's growing musically, and he starts to grow into this fantastic musician who could be intimidating to a king or an archbishop because he's so phenomenal and kind of outshining everybody. And of course, now the other kid grows into a wonderful human being with his relationship to his music. So now you have the other kid, being a good musician, a person who is, the community likes and all that kind of thing, a giving person, a great person. The other person now, Wolfgang, with all of his genius, is being shunned. And you have Wolfgang now with, all of these symphonies and recording all this stuff and basically, buried in a pine box at age 35 that his family can't even afford. And then you have the kid who, maybe is, that gets a job and plays on the side. And so what I say in my book is that both of these existences they're special. There's something good about them. There's something fantastic about them. They're better than the hatred and the war and the jealousy and the killing of, other choices that you can make in life. And, all of it leads to the story of Jazz for Peace.
It's a wonderful presentation. Let me give me a minute to clear up a couple of things. Well, first of all, my audience is 80% US and the rest is Canadian. So they don't even know I'm Austrian. So here's the cat out of the bag, so to say. It's not a secret. But they might be confused. This guy every week, and he's a crazy European, so to say, in the US podcasting scene. First of all, secondly, you said Mozart died poor. Yes, he did, because he made tons of money, but he spent 5 times more than he made. But actually, for human understanding, he was extremely successful commercially, but he was more successful spending. So he was always broke, but he theoretically made a lot of money. And you said his father actually earned money with him. His father was actually truly believing as a divine gift of God. The father of Mozart was bringing him all over Europe to present him to kings because he wanted to show them through Mozart as a living proof that God exists. So that's quite something for a small boy. So
it's incredible.
Yeah.
But I think what I felt in my interpretation was that Mozart outgrew that and now became an innovative musician. He started to play things that were great, that were going to live for centuries.
Absolute. But before we spend 1 hour talking about Mozart, which I guess you and I could do, to go through his life, because one of the bad deeds or the black spots on my soul is that I unfortunately have also studied music way back when. And so, of course, when you study music in Vienna, Mozart is all over the place.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Well,
all right. It was a past life.
Listen, I went to Vienna numerous times. I actually knew... there's a great filmmaker who used to live in Vienna. I don't know if he still does, Werner Herzog.
He's a great filmmaker.
Okay, so I know. I've met Werner. I know the family well, all that stuff. So they have a great piano at that house, by the way. So now, basically, I did say in my foreword, because this book isn't written by me, but I wrote the foreword, and I do use the word, oh my goodness, it's something of guilt. I say in the so here's what I said, okay? Because my understanding was he did phenomenally well through his father's management, phenomenal. But he was a child prodigy.
Of course,
he was a child prodigy. As he became really great and started running symphony after symphony after symphony, it was hard to get them played. It was hard to get gigs. he didn't, he
Or
was shunned by the aristocracy. They kind of, but, well, if you believe anything in the movie Amadeus, did you see that movie?
I
Okay,
didn't
it was
watch
a
the
movie
movie, no.
about him, and I use the word Graceland of guilt. So that's what I was calling, because every time I go to Vienna, I do see Mozart all over the place. But what happened during his lifetime, not so, in other words, he seems to get gigs nowadays that he qualified for in 1731. And this is,
Right. We will.
we'll get
Yeah.
to it, but
Go.
Philip, this is a complaint that I have in general as an artist, because all of the artists that I looked up to, none of them was ever known by 1% of humanity during their lifetime. Okay. Whether you go to a Vincent van Gogh or whether you go to, all you can name them, whether they're painters, whether they're musicians, a Charlie Parker, lots of them died very young. Many of them died somewhat tragically. And even though some people think they were famous, they might have been famous for a couple of years in one country, you know? And so as far as humanity knowing they are, I believe that great artists should be known by 1% of our world, because their art and their contribution could have a profoundly positive effect. So I believe, right now I'm on a 0 to 1 crusade. Philip, listen, I believe that world peace should be funded at 1% by the end of my 25th anniversary celebration. I'll tell you about that as we go along. But right now, I feel we live in a world that funds war at 100% and funds peace at 0%. I don't think it's fair. I think if you're going to fund war at 100, you should fund peace as well.
Last Austria information on this podcast. Next time you're in Vienna, you should visit a Peace Institute. It's one of the few world institutes that is devoted to peace, and it's actually located in a castle outside from Vienna. And it's a world place where diplomats study from all over the world to study how to actually create
What
peace.
about a performance at the Peace Institute? What do you think of that?
It sounds, they have a beautiful open air theater. It's down at the castle. They just made it's Burgstleining, it's called. They made a beautiful stage, and this would be the right place for you, because it's devoted to peace and to teach to diplomats and politicians all around the world come there to study how to actually implement peace. And they have an open air theater with a castle in the background, and it would be a beautiful location for you. So anyway, that's the last.
Yeah, well,
Go ahead.
that's why what I want to tell you is we are in the 1-year anniversary of the 25th year of Jazz for Peace. So Jazz for Peace was formed on 9/11, and this coming September 11th will be the 25th actual day of its birth. So what I want to do for this 25th year, I would like to take funding for world peace from 0 to 1%. I know it should be funded much more, but if I can get from 0 to 1 in 1 year, that would be great. And I think a performance at the Peace Institute would be a great part of that journey.
Reach out. I'm sure they would be delighted to, because they are definitely, that's right down their alley. But let our audience who have maybe never heard about Jazz for Peace give a little bit of a background why you're invited in the first place, beside of being such a inspirational person right from the get-go. Let a little bit explain to people the mission of Jazz for Peace, and then we will a little bit reflect on a spiritual level. But let's first of all introduce the project.
Basically, what I was starting to tell you before I ended up in the the book section about where Vienna is mentioned as a Graceland of guilt. But before I got into that, what did want to tell you is that I was kind of I'm kind of two people. There's the the BC and the AD, as they say in time frame. There's the before Jazz for Peace, and there's the so up until 9/11, I was a musician, and I was just a musician looking at the world, trying to be this, trying to be that. And I had my own thoughts, and I was learning things as I went along. And I was learning things like, wow, music brings people together. I mean, I can't believe I'm playing for all these people in Japan, and none of them speak English, and yet my music is communicating and they're communicating with me. So all these kinds of things that you learn about music, the way it transcends things, the way it has great positive possibilities to unite people in positive ways. So I learned all that, but then 9/11 came, and I happened to get a phone call from someone who had taken photos of me the day before. And I went up on my roof, and I was less than a quarter of a mile away, and I watched it. And then I wrote a poem called Jazz for Peace. And Philip, basically, I've been trying to live up to the words of a poem for 25 years. Now, living up to those words, which maybe I'll recite for you in the musical thing or something, has led to a lot of things. One thing it led to was reciting the poem at a jazz festival that I happen to have coming up. The first Jazz for Peace concert, when I put it to music, a benefit concert series that's helped over 850 of the world's most outstanding causes, and to me, redefines peace. Because when you help an outstanding cause, you're reaching all of the people that cause is reaching, and that helps you to not only, solve problems today, but stop problems from the future by these outstanding causes. And another thing it led to was a concert at the United Nations where I just happened to tell my manager to make sure there was a Palestinian and an Israeli in the band. So I had, a band up uniting Israel, Palestine, and America at the United Nations, and some other nationalities as well. And again, I did happen to notice that here I was with Palestinians and Israelis saying, we want music, not war. But $3 trillion later, we went the other direction. So I don't know how necessary it is if you bring the arts and culture in to solve problems. It's been doing it for many, many years. And there's a movie about these people in Tibet called The Song of the Weeping Camel, where they use music to solve an incredible problem that they were having with a camel that gave birth to an albino baby, and wouldn't accept it. So my point is, it can solve problems. The arts and culture can solve problems. And Jazz for Peace now has a lot of solutions to a lot of problems. If anybody ever wants to ask me, I'll be glad to tell them.
Well, let us tell the audience what they can see, because we had a bit of setup camera problem. You're sitting right behind a piano, and a little bit later, but the people have to stay with us. A little bit later, you're going to be so kind and play a little song for us to give a demonstration, as you said, about your words, to bring them into reality, into musical reality. But the people have to stay with us for a bit before we can make them enjoy.
Yes.
And of course, I'd be happy to ask you the solutions that you talk about. Please give us a couple of ideas, and then let's go into.
There's quite a few. I mean, it's kind of crazy. For example, one is a lot of people are worried about technology taking away jobs, right? Is that something you find people are worried about? Look, that AI is going to take all of our jobs away, or technology is going to eliminate jobs. What's going to happen? Well, there's a 50-second video I have where I basically just say it's really simple. If you have a technology that's taking away a job, that is freeing up a person to follow his dream. So, when I've been growing up, most of the time I was growing up, I'd always run into people that say, hey, what do you do? Well, I'm trying to be a musician, but I got to make ends meet, so I'm driving this cab. You know what I mean? Hey, I want to clean the river, but I'm so tired after I work all day out in the mine or something. You know what I mean? So if you have jobs that are being eliminated from machines or technology, why not take the money from that? And now you have money to help subsidize a person to go after his dream. And if he starts solving the world's problems with his dreams, you can, there's incentives. So, that's one way, rather than just give it all to, I don't know, Jeff Bezos. Is that who we would give it all to? It seems like we're giving all the money to like a few people when we could spread it out amongst all the people.
to hear a little bit, put a contraposition, because I always wonder, because I think I'm a creative, I'm from the creative
Right.
industry, and you're obviously very creative. So this is your natural state, creativity. And remember back when MySpace was before Facebook
Right.
and all of these things came,
Yeah.
and everybody said, "Oh, wow, fantastic. We're going to finally discover that there are thousands of Mozarts on the planet, just never had the chance. There are thousands of Shakespeares
Right.
on the planet, but we never had the chance to read them because we didn't find the publisher and this and this
Yeah.
and this. Now we're having MySpace, and we're going to discover hundreds of Shakespeares and hundreds of Mozarts, and we haven't,
Right.
right?
True. Good point. I think it's a great point, by the way, Philip. Now, here's the problem. Here's the problem. The problem is we are in a scenario of capitalism where perhaps, okay, the most corrupt industry is the arts and the music industry. I mean, people now know all about it because they've been watching the courthouse down here in New York with these rappers and all the crazy things that are going on. And a lot of people know are realizing how corrupt it is, didn't know, but you're dealing with, insane corruption. I mean, for example, a rapper named Ice Cube recently revealed that when him and his friends used to make records, they couldn't get the record label to push a single unless it had violence. Well, then they looked up the record label and found out that the record labels own the prisons. So they were looking for music that were going to get people arrested so they could fill up their prisons. So, it goes on with the amount of corruption. And so that's a lot of the reason that you don't even hear, okay, the Mozarts of tomorrow. You don't find out about a lot of people until after they die. And a perfect example is that I can think of is John Coltrane, because when I was a kid, I was taking John Coltrane records out of the library just because I was like, I can't really understand this, but I can't debunk it either. I mean, there's something to it. And I asked my teacher who John Coltrane was. He said, "Oh, some drug addict." I said, "Well, who do you think I should see? Well, try this guy." And he gave me another guy who was a very good musician, but not the transcendence of a John Coltrane. So my point was, John Coltrane, not only was he not alive, he had been dead for at least 10 years by the time my music teacher told me that. So imagine, you know what I mean? How hard it is for a musician to the Mozarts of tomorrow, whoever they are, to be heard during their lifetime. And check out all the people that you don't hear, that you do hear. A lot of them are horrific. Sometimes the person you hear is the producer who realizes that, well, he has control of distribution, so maybe he can play Mary Had a Little Lamb and put it out, and it'll get distributed. You see what I mean? So corruption plays a big role, and I am very much against the situation we're in now, where again we find out about all these people way after they're dead, and we're not even hearing their music during the time that it has its impact, because it has the biggest impact during the time that they're in. Because let's say you listen to me after I'm dead. I'm not in that era to make that music for you. It's a different era. Times have changed. I'm saying something in today's world. So it's better for us to hear a Beethoven back in Beethoven's time, is my point, or a Charlie Parker, etc.
Right. It is one of the hot discussions. So been going on more than 100 years about art. I think in 100 years from now, I fear we will have the same discussion. But what you said at the beginning, and I think it's a very important point with technology, a lot of people are skeptical. And I guess, unfortunately, I'm one of them who are skeptical that if people all of a sudden will have all the free time, that we will discover, and that is the point that we were trying to make, both of us, that all these people with their free time, that we all discover they have fantastic hidden talents, like being able to write poems or to make music, because I've said through MySpace and other things, we would already know when there's so many hidden talents. So I was really worried that if technology will really bring so much free time to people, that how people will fill this time in a good and positive way. But that's a long concept. I guess we'll have to wait and see. I hope that you're right. But
listen, your point is to be given credence, because if we handle it wrong, we're going to have what you're talking about. You know what I mean? In fact, if you look out in the world now, what do you see? Tons of music being released that is absolute garbage all over the place. We're being bombarded with it. So that's a problem we have right now, what you're saying. But how is it? So in my idea, okay, you give that guy a chance to say, listen, you don't have to go flip that burger because we have a machine doing it. But here's some of the profits. You want to clean that river? Go get that thing cleaned and incentivize achievement. So see, my point is, if someone just flounders around and doesn't do anything, okay, fine, but you're not going to be incentivized for that. If you really are passionate about it, okay, you're going to want to clean it. So passion is,
and that's the here is where things get complicated. This is the sticky end of your argument, because passion is, it's a rare thing. And I hope that the world that you describe will come to be. I mean, we all would wish that this world would come to be where, when people given the free choice and they, giving a basic income or whatever, Europe is thinking about it very dramatically. It's basically, Europe is almost there, that every person will get from birth to death, let's say $1,000 if they work. If they don't work, it doesn't matter. The state will send them $1,000. And it will happen in the next couple of years. That's basically where Europe
how is that, a month or a week or what?
Months.
Is what?
How you mean a month?
Well, the $1,000, is that per week
Per
or
month.
per month?
It's a number that I'm throwing out there. It might be 1,100, it might be 900, but somewhere around 1,000 per month. And basically Europe is going full steam into that direction. That's every citizen, from the second you're born until the moment you die, you get this money. And if you work, it's on top. If you don't work, that's it. So basically that is where Europe is moving. That's why we're having this discussion that you're talking about basically every single day, because a lot of people say nobody's going to work anymore. They're just going to go to Thailand and enjoy their life. Right. Other people say they will finally do the jobs that they actually really like and enjoy. And then, of course, people say, what are we going to do with people in healthcare who have unpleasant job, taking care of the elderly? Do we find enough people who are passionate about it? Who's going to take away the garbage? Who's going to clean the sewages? Who's going to do the plumbing? Who's going to do all of these things? So this discussion is very intensively going on in Europe, because we are basically one step to try to take. And we actually have several cities and places in Europe who's doing this already as like an experiment, and we're getting quite mixed signals as a result. So this is all in the process, but let's wait and see. I guess you and me can only...
Like I said, passion, okay, there's two ways to look at passion. Passion is something, when properly directed, gives you an inner wealth. You see what I mean? So you say someone's not passionate, okay, but that can be to your detriment. You know what I mean? And here's another thing. It's really... I have trouble finding a person who isn't passionate about something. I've helped over 850 outstanding causes, and I've seen people so passionate about a cat up in a tree. I'm not going to save that cat, but this woman is. She's passionate about it. So it's crazy. I think there is a hidden passion inside of us, and it's there to be found.
Wonderful. I hope you're right. I'm all for it. I mean, you have my support, and I'm old enough to have grown. I'm an authentic European. I'm a pessimist, and this is what it means to be a European. I'm not positive. I'm not looking into the future. I'm looking into the past. But that's that's in my bloodstream, and we can't do anything about it. But let's talk a bit about music and the healing power, because that's the source of your just for a piece, that you believe in the healing power of music, and that comes now closer to my area, the spirituality. Why do you think that harmonizing among oneself, among a group of people, why there's such a transcendental power, the power of harmonizing, just stamping the feet in the desert, or the simplest of rhythm, the simplest of why is it create such a, is it the vibrations, is it the emotion where people harmonize as a technical thing, or is it the vibration that's being released? If it's the inner movement of the energy fields that are opening up. How do you explain the magic of music?
Two things. One thing is there is something medicinal about sound, and music is a way of generating sound. And the ways that going all the way back to, the old days. In fact, there is talk now that churches at one point were acoustic healing centers where people came into these buildings that were majestically made acoustic wise, and they were being healed with sound in these unbelievably extraordinary acoustic, structures. Now, the bottom line is music has had healing properties going all the way through time. And it's just, for indigenous people and all that stuff. So you've got all of that. But here's the second component. The second component comes from something I said in an interview only a few days after 9/11, because I had recited the poem in Savannah, Georgia, the poem that I've been trying to live up to every day. I recited it in Savannah, Georgia, and there was 8,500 people there because I was headlining a jazz festival. And so all these people talked about that I recited the poem, and they were so moved by it. And when I got back up here, I got a call from, the press wanting me to recite that poem and talk to me about what's going on, Jazz for Peace, and what is all this coming out of me, as a response to 9/11. And I said off the top of my head, Philip, I wouldn't have even remembered I said it. I said, when we fill our souls with, and I mentioned our greatest qualities, creativity, artistry, humanity, intellectuality. And I just read, and then I kind of said, our greatest qualities, that we fill our soul up with those qualities that we inherently have, we will have a better chance now at avoiding the behavior that leads to destruction. Well, and all of that's common sense to me. All of it's true. I didn't even remember I said it off the top of my head until years later, it was popping up all over the place. And I'd be on Google, like looking for an event, previous event in Portland, because somebody wanted information on it because they're in Portland too, something like that. I can't find that. And I find my 50 favorite quotes, Einstein, this one, that one, Aldous Huxley, to Rick DellaRatta. I'm like, what? This thing had been lifted and placed all over in over 150, at least, famous quotes websites in every language, Icelandic, So I found that out. That's how I found it out. But here's the bottom line. What is in music? All of our greatest qualities, right? Creativity is in music. Artistry is in music. Humanity is in music. Intellectuality. So, in other words, music, besides having all this healing potential that I talked about, does embody our greatest qualities as human beings for us to tap into.
Absolutely. And if you follow our little podcast, especially healing and music is a continuous theme. Is it through sound bath? And we have also professors, quantum physics here, and explaining all of the magic of sound and vibration. And of course, if you know myself, especially the Dark Ages, it was not uncommon that priests would give you prayer for certain sicknesses. There are even prayer books written that you go through prayers and sing certain songs as part of the Catholic Church to heal certain things, like Ave Marias for the heart, which of course is very logic, because if you look at the Sufis and they sing an kind of songs again for the heart, and many other cultures. So basically, if you look around the planet, and everything that's connected to the sound that A creates, it's a heart energy field. And that's why, of course, Ave Maria is something that we sing for heart diseases. So basically, there's a universal language in the healing of music, and you're absolutely right. So you believe into the intellectual qualities, into our special talents. You don't look the harmonizing on the rhythmical of a feeling connected, or is that something that you also put on side of it? And where do you frame it? That feeling of one guy with a guitar around the fire, and everyone comes into this mood. Where do you see this magic of harmonizing?
So there was a time, Philip, when I was more well known in New York City as a Brazilian jazz musician than an American one. And that's because I was in Japan, and there was a Brazilian bass player in Japan who found out I was playing there, and he was into Brazilian music and jazz. And he said, "Hey, what time is your gig over? I want you to know, would you ever go to jazz? You ever go around?" I said, "Well, my gig is over at like 10:30. I could go somewhere, or maybe even 10 o'clock. I could go somewhere after if you want." "Oh, okay, I'll pick you up." And he started taking me to all these jazz clubs. And the two of us, he was a bass player, two of us would come in and the people would go crazy. I don't know if he had set these up before, and he probably did. But we'd go to the Japanese jazz music, bring us up on the stage, or bring the food out. We would play. And I was playing a lot of Brazilian music with him because that was his thing. Well, he sent me back here and he said, "My friend is going to call you when you get back." I said, "Okay." He said, "His name is Guilherme Franco." I said, "Oh, Guilherme Franco." I said, "That there must be a lot of people named Guilherme Franco from Brazil." He says, "Why do you say that?" "Because I know a Guilherme Franco. He used to play with McCoy Tyner, Keith Jarrett, and I interviewed him for my thesis on jazz when I was a kid because I went to a McCoy Tyner concert to interview McCoy Tyner, and he never came off the stage, so I interviewed the guys in the band." He said, "That's him." So anyway, from playing that band, I got well known. But the bottom line is I got to know Brazilian music a lot. And by doing that, I got to know what happens sometimes in Brazil. 5,000 people playing, on Carnival, you know what I mean? Playing a percussion instrument. And I had a friend of mine also into the musical once said to me, "Rick, the best thing for me is a lot of people doing a little bit." So when you say community, naturally I think of these massive get-togethers where a lot of people do a little bit. So my point is, it's it's endless. You can go anywhere with it. Do you know what I mean? You could go to a large ensemble, or you could go to a whole city of people if you just give them a simple thing to do. You know what I mean? But community is infectious when it comes to music. Even if it's one person playing, a community is enjoying it.
I know, and I've read on you that, as you said, you had like 800 causes that you support. So this is a massive money. That's why you do Jazz for Peace. So people give you money, so you take that money and do good in the world and support peace. Obviously, that's the idea behind it. And we'll maybe talk about this in a minute. But maybe now, if you feel the moment is right for some musical moment, I'll let you. Thank you for sharing it with us. And after this, maybe you can talk about how people, if they want to get involved, can do so.
Yes, absolutely. Let me see if I can get this. So, I'm going to do something very strange for you today because I take requests from around the world. It could be any song, and I turn it into jazz. And someone said, "Could you take like a song from a boy band and turn it into jazz?" I said, "I can take any song and turn it into jazz." I said, "Well, I was watching the Super Bowl, and then I heard this song from when I was a kid that I used to like from the Backstreet Boys." I said, "All right, well, I don't know anything by the Backstreet Boys, but I'll learn the song for you." And I said, I used to play basketball with that guy's manager. He used to cheat a little bit. This guy was really, you could tell he knew how to make a lot of money in music. So this is a song by the Backstreet Boys. I'm going to turn it into jazz for you. It's called "I Want It That Way." At least I'm going to try to. I don't know what's going to happen, Philip. That's why this is jazz. But let's see what I do, okay?
desire. Believe when I say I want it that way, but we are two worlds apart. Can't reach to your heart when you say I want it that way. Tell me why ain't nothing but a heart. Tell me why nothing but a mistake. Tell me why I never wanna hear you say I want it that way. I hear jazz for peace coming through the trees. In my heart it fills me like a celebration. I see the light and I want to follow, inspired by the past contributions of those that came before. Lay the groundwork for us to build on this universal language that is a gift for all mankind. When we speak it, people are enlightened by the creativity and artistry that stands for peace and love and humanity. Intelligence that leads to reaching potential that we have in our souls. So we can raise our total conscience and see that the gift of giving is our greatest privilege. I hear jazz for peace.
Thank you so unbelievable for this inspiration. If that doesn't lift you up, I don't know what in this world may lift you up. and the Backstreet Boys. I have to say thank you for the Backstreet Boys as well, for Bill. Unbelievable. So let's get real. If people hear this, if people want to get involved, are there ways for everybody? Just for thoughts, for energy, for giving. How do you reach out? Is there something you need? Just share it with
We
us.
have something called E-Ways, and basically it's jazzforpeace.org/easyways.pdf. And if you go to that page, it's amazing because there are 6 ways to participate, and 5 of them are free. So I'm going to just tell you some of the ways now. I'm going to just look at them and read them. Basically, one way is you can appear as a guest on the Jazz for Peace podcast and tell your story. We will get it out to the world. There's live jazz on it. And we have people that, watch our podcast because we have such a diverse amount of different guests. So you can appear as a guest on the podcast. You can also be a contributor to that or our new legacy series and refer someone as a guest. Okay. You can also get paid as a curator to make a list of people that would, could be on the legacy series. These are people who want to leave something special about themselves for their grandchildren, for their for future generations, and through Jazz for Peace, reach the public with their unique experience in the world. So that's another way. Now, then we have some other amazing ways. One of them is to share something called an easy letter. And this is our letter that shows me performing the first of what we hope will be many performances through this year-long celebration, basically the 25th anniversary of Jazz for Peace and our United Nations events and all our unprecedented achievements. Through that 25-year celebration, it's a worldwide celebration and it's 365 days. And what you can do in your town is take this little document, which is also in that Easy Ways thing. It's really jazzforpeace.org/easyletter.pdf. But you can take that document, give it to your local jazz club, give it to your local presenter, your local community series, concert series, your local anything. So that's another thing you can do. Now, another one, which is also really amazing, you can take another link that we have that's also on that page. Like I said, give that to, it's called jazzforpeace.org/payitforward.pdf. That's a one page where any organization, anyone doing something good in the world, any person or group of people that needs, wants to raise funds for the outstanding cause will see how they follow 3 easy steps to obtain funding from Jazz for Peace. This is a benefit concert series at no cost to them, plus the staffing, expertise, and guidance to make it successful. We've done over 850 times, and they can just give that to a nonprofit in their community or a couple of nonprofits. They can just give the link to a nonprofit, give it to anybody. Like I said, you can take this podcast and give it to the Peace House. You know what I mean? Because they'll see that this link on there. But again, if you weren't watching the podcast, you take that Easy Ways, jazzforpeace.org/easyways.pdf, give that link to the Peace House or whatever to create something like, so that something like this could happen. Those are 5 different things you can do. They're all free and they all help us take funding for world peace from 0, where it is now, to what should be, 50%, 100%, but at least to get it to 1% by the end of this 1 year long. Now, the 6th thing you can do, because people will contact us and say, look, Rick, I'm busy. I got a million things going on, but I have a house, I have a boat, I have a vacation home. You know what I mean? What can I just send a contribution? You can send a contribution of any amount, of course, but what we like to say is, if you send any amount over $90, you're helping us. You know what I mean? You're help. Wait, we got it. We're looking at $10 billion here. That would be 1% of, in other words, 100% where they're funding from war, 10 billion might be 1%. So we've got to come up with a lot. But like I said, you can, none of those 5 freeways are, if you don't feel passionate about any one of those, sure, you can absolutely help us with a donation. And the link, and it's all on that page.
Is that? Sure. We will share all the links, don't worry. And of course, I have to ask, do you have some big donors? You don't need to name names, but are there some big guys behind to a little bit push you on the way? Or you really hoping on concerts and direct contribution, or is there some little bit bigger folks in the background?
I'll be honest with you, Philip is funded at 0%. War is funded at 100. So if you look at what Jazz for Peace is done at 0, and you can do that at that Easy Ways link, you can find this page. It's a page with all of the testimonials and stuff from people, and it has presidents and prime ministers who've weighed in and all kinds of, famous people, but it also has all of our benefit concerts, the recipients writing the little letter for us. We take, you can link to the letter, but then you can just read, a couple sentences from that letter at how beneficial it was. If anyone ever saw what we've done at 0 and then thought, well, what if peace was fun? 1%. And so this is what I'm trying to do. I feel a little dystopian because I see the light, Now, before Jazz for Peace, I saw, wow, if we help benefit concert, I wonder what, this might be a crowd. So I saw those things that we brought Israelis, Palestinians together at the United Nations. If we did these different things, if I went to Pakistan and helped them with, their, in other words, you can do things with music that would cost billions of dollars to do militarily. You can just send me over there. You know what I mean? Which is what Jazz for Peace has done. So my point is, if we only, it's like that. It's like Plato's cave. I don't know if you ever heard that analogy. What is it? Plato's cave. The guy's in the cave and they can't see the light even when they show it to them. I'm trying to show people, look at what we've done at 0. Imagine a world at 1%.
I think it's, of course, a worthy cause that we all will get behind, because world peace is what we ultimately want and need, and we need it desperately right now. Because with every year growing, the danger is growing exponentially. I mean, we have more atomic weapons we ever had before because we're going in the wrong direction. Now, in Ukraine, we have so many autonomous weapons who shoot and kill on their own discretion. I thought this will never happen in my lifetime, and now we have it already on the front lines. I mean, not talking about drones, I'm talking about robots. And now that hell is breaking loose with humanoid robots coming all over the place. And I think we definitely are in desperate need for peace. So your work is more important than ever before. And I wish you all the luck in the world, and we share all the links down here. And I hope that many people will get motivated to get involved and to keep that process pushing forward.
Is participation. That's why we make it so easy for people to participate. If someone says, oh, I have no money at all, I can't participate. Yes, you can. We have 6 easy ways on that page. 5 of them are free. You can participate. So the key, Philip, is for everyone to participate. That's the key to resolving these issues in the right way.
Thank you so very much, first of all, for your beautiful music. That is number one. And thank you for coming. I hope it was not unpleasant with your medical device, the singing. I was so worried that might be uncomfortable, but maybe our audience don't know it. But anyone who's really used to suffering, it's musicians. They are tough cookies. And skiing, I mean, I had to smile a bit, because from all the things that you could have done, I'm an Austrian, and maybe the audience don't know it, but we are the skiing nation on earth. So from all the things you're possibly coming to Austrian podcast with a skiing accident, it's hilarious at some level, not making fun of your pain, but it's irony there. Thank you, Rick. I appreciate it so very, very much.
My pleasure, Philip. It was wonderful.